Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Tuesday. It's September 16, 2025. Great to be with you once again on EWTN's Catholic Connection. So much to talk about this morning. I do hope, again, that you're doing well. We have a great lineup for you, as we always try to do, thanks to my A-team back in Irondale. So appreciate the great work of Richard and Deb and all the folks at EWTN Radio to help us make this show a possibility every single morning. So here's what we're going to do, folks. The one, the only Steve Ray, scheduled to come back on today. We were doing a series with him, as you may know if you're a regular listener to this program, on the Blessed Virgin, talking about the unknown mysteries, known mysteries, sorrows of Mary. And he has a whole beautiful lineup of interviews that we're going to do with Steve on this topic. But because of the developing news and the story that keeps growing legs, the horrible incident last Wednesday with the death and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I really thought, since this is the first time we're having Steve on since the assassination last Wednesday, being that he's a husband, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, a well-known speaker, a cultural commentator, somebody who is out there speaking about morality and issues on a regular basis and looking at everything through a Catholic perspective, of course, I thought I would get his take on this, and then we'll come back to the unknown sorrows of Mary. I believe this will be part 1 of 3 that we'll pick up next week. But I really want to get his take on the situation because there's so many developments that have been happening. I don't know if you're aware of all the different prayer events that are going on. I was just chatting with Vanessa Den Hagarmo before the show, and she was telling me that her sisters went to a huge rally at Oakland University in southeastern Michigan, and that these prayer rallies are happening all over not only the country, but all over the world, even in Great Britain. And if you think about that area of the world that has been so persecuted, that is the place where the woman was standing outside the abortion mill, praying silently, and she was arrested because she told police, "I may be praying inside my head." And that's the same place where a comedian basically was canceled and eventually chased down by the police for some comments he made on social media regarding his concerns with transgender ideology. So I really think that there is something going on here. And so that's why I wanted Steve Ray. And we'll be continuing the conversation as we go through the week, as we get ready to mark the memorial service, which is coming up this weekend. But it's super important when we have wonderful people like Steve with so much depth in terms of their faith and their knowledge just in life to get their perspective. And how are we to continue to respond to this tragedy? What can we do? And I think the best thing we can do is to live our faith well, and to not be afraid to speak up and not be fearful. Be not afraid, as John Paul II said so many times, and as our Lord said so many times in Scripture. So Steve Ray will join us for 2 segments this morning, and next week, God willing, we'll pick up the unknown sorrows of Mary, part 1 of 3. And then I'm very excited to have Kevin Matthews, a former radio legend from the Midwest, particularly Chicago, and the subject of a new film, Broken Mary, the Kevin Matthews story. I found it so compelling in watching the trailer and doing the background, being from secular media myself. And this guy was a superstar in radio, in secular radio. And there's a soundbite in the trailer that we'll play for you a little bit later on in the program when he's with us, where he says, if you would have told me that I would be going around the country bringing a statue of the Virgin Mary, a broken statue of the Virgin Mary around and talking about God, I would have told you were probably high. It's just so interesting what God does with our brokenness. So we'll talk with Kevin. That's coming up at 9:39. It's called The Kevin Matthews Story. Broken Mary is a film, and it opens October 7th. So that's the program for the first hour of Catholic Connection. Steve Ray and former radio legend Kevin Matthews joining us. He'll join us at 39 minutes past the hour, and Steve will join us right after the news and the weather. Speaking of which, the weather. Low pressure will track slowly northwestern into the mid-Atlantic, westward I should say, into the mid-Atlantic through midweek, bringing a risk for excessive rainfall, gusty winds, shallow coastal flooding, rip currents, and large surf. Unreasonably warm to hot temperatures are persisting in the mid to upper Mississippi Valley and into the Great Lakes and into the northeastern part of the country, and that will continue, they say, at least until Thursday. It's 4 minutes past the hour. We appreciate your listenership here at EWTN, Global Catholic Radio. Let's see what's happening in the news now on EWTN on a Tuesday. Well, as Catholic News Agency reports, in what some are calling the Charlie Kirk effect, people across the country, including many college students who are not ordinarily churchgoers, have decided to go back to church since the assassination last week of the conservative Christian political activist Charlie Kirk. Matt Sarusin, co-founder of Newman Ministry, a Catholic nonprofit that operates on about 250 campuses across the country, told CNA he has spoken with Catholic college ministry leaders throughout the country over the last several days, and every one of them, he said, told me they've seen bigger crowds at masses and lots of people they've never seen before. He said, I have not talked to anyone who has not seen an increase in mass attendance. Some schools, he added, are reporting increases of 15%. He even told CNA that many more college students are also asking for spiritual direction. So many, he said, are asking, what do I do? What is evil? How does God allow this? They're asking basic questions. Since Kirk's death on September 10th, social media platforms X, TikTok, and Instagram have also been flooded with posts from users saying they plan to go back to church or to go to church for the first time, thanks to the influence of Charlie Kirk. Meanwhile, a report says Kirk's suspected killer confessed to the murder before his arrest. The Washington Post saying Tyler Robinson told friends on the social platform Discord, hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. The Post says a message was sent about 2 hours before he turned himself into authorities. The 22-year-old is accused of shooting and killing Kirk while the conservative was speaking at an outdoor Turning Point event at Utah Valley University last week. And FBI Director Kash Patel says a family of Charlie Kirk's alleged killer has told investigators that the 22-year-old suspect subscribed to left-wing ideology, especially in the past few years.
He had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for.
When asked why the person who received the text didn't say something, Patel replied, the investigation is ongoing. No clear Johnson, though, expected to be arraigned on state murder charges today and is likely to also face federal charges. The president is expected to attend a memorial, meanwhile, for Kirk on Sunday in Glendale, Arizona. And there are new details about the arrest of a Texas Tech student who was caught on camera celebrating the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. A video shared on social media by Texas Governor Greg Abbott and has since gone viral. The arrest shows a woman named Cameron Booker. She's been charged with battery, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. She was also cited for assault. She was seen pushing people in a crowd and also chanting various horrible sayings about Charlie Kirk. And court records show she posted a $200 bond that has since been released. The school confirmed the report, but would not say if she had been expelled. Vice President J.D. Vance paying tribute to Charlie Kirk by hosting the latest episode of his podcast. On Monday's edition of the Charlie Kirk Show, Vance praised the conservative activist as a visionary and luminary.
He was a joyful warrior for our country. He loved America. He devoted himself tirelessly to making our country a better place. He was a critical part of getting Donald Trump elected as president, getting me elected as vice president.
The vice president went on to say Kirk created a whole social network for an entire generation of young people. Vance escorted Kirk's casket back to his home state of Arizona aboard Air Force Two last week. Again, a memorial service for Charlie Kirk taking place this weekend in Glendale, Arizona. And Jim Roop tells us an employee of UCLA now on leave after posting comments about the murdered activist.
The social media comments by the employee include, "You can't force people to mourn someone who hated us," and "It's okay to be happy when someone who hated you and called for your people's death dies." UCLA says it condemns in the strongest possible terms the comments made by its employee on their personal social media accounts, adding comments that celebrate or condone violence is inconsistent with its core values. The university has launched an investigation. I'm Jim Roop.
President Trump says he'd consider designating the anti-fascism group Antifa a domestic terrorist organization along with other left-wing groups. The president saying Monday he'd move forward with that plan if he had the support of his cabinet and the Justice Department.
I would do that 100%, and others also, by the way, but Antifa is terrible.
Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, meanwhile, also specifically calling out Black Lives Matter demonstrations. It comes after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The First Amendment means you can post whatever you want online without fear or arrest, but it doesn't mean there may not be any consequences.
That's absolutely correct, particularly in the private sector, because in the private sector, you do not have a First Amendment right to say anything.
That's Florida employment attorney Susan Norton reacting to the many people who are being let go from their jobs or suspended after posting social media comments after either making light or celebrating the assassination of the conservative activist Charlie Kirk. She also says some public school teachers and college professors have been reassigned or placed on paid leave, saying those in the public sector do have more protection, but ultimately could still be fired for cause. In other news this morning, Rory O'Neill tells us the Israeli military launching its long-awaited military strike into Gaza City.
Israel's ambassador to the UN says the ground operation in Gaza is a move to eliminate the military capabilities of Hamas and to end Hamas rule in the territory. He says other objectives include securing the release of 48 remaining hostages and preventing future attacks into Israel. The strike comes less than a day after an independent UN inquiry found that Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. I'm Rory O'Neill.
The U.S. says the focus now is on what happens next following Israel's strike on Hamas inside Qatar last week.
Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, is in Israel here speaking with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He actually has several meetings that are set up with top leadership here in Israel, and it comes again at a critical moment.
That's reporter Matt Bradley saying, speaking alongside Netanyahu, Rubio reiterated the U.S. still wants to get a peace deal done, but acknowledged it may not be possible. Again, Rubio is in Qatar. The Gulf nation has been serving as a mediator in negotiations between Israel and Hamas. NBC's Garrett Haig tells us the Trump administration appears to be set to send National Guard troops into a growing number of U.S. cities.
The White House strategy of surging federal resources and the National Guard into cities to fight crime set to expand south. The administration preparing to launch a combined mission, including the FBI and National Guard soldiers, into Memphis, Tennessee.
Trump telling Fox News late last week, that the mayor of Memphis, a Democrat, is happy with the move. But over the weekend, Mayor Paul Young said that's not true and that he doesn't think the deployment of National Guard troops will actually reduce crime. The Washington Post reports New Orleans, though, could be next. And Karen Curtis tells us a Florida professor is proposing a new scale to categorize dangerous hurricanes based on water and wind.
A Category 5 hurricane with winds over 157 miles per hour is currently the most feared, but University of South Florida geosciences professor Jennifer Collins says there's an over-reliance on the wind scale when water is the real killer.
Our scale, you can have a category for each of these, the wind, the storm surge, and the rainfall, and then we can provide an overall ranking.
Collins says the new tropical cyclone severity scale tops out at a Category 6, giving the public more information on the real dangers. Karen Curtis, Miami.
It is a Tuesday morning, September 16th. Appreciate your listenership here on EWTN's Global Catholic Radio Network and EWTN production. That is Catholic Connection. Good to be with you and appreciate the great work of many of our guests, including our good friend Steve Ray. He's going to be joining us in just a few minutes to give his perspective on the continuing developments in the Charlie Kirk related story. We'll have his take and also bring up some interesting responses out there that continue to roll in. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for listening to EWTN Global Catholic Radio and EWTN's production of Catholic Connection Monday through Friday. Here on the EWTN, again, Global Catholic Radio Network, EWTN.com for all the information. Always great to have my dear friend, fellow pilgrimage leader, and of course, Catholic convert Steve Ray with us. He is a noted author, speaker, apologist, presenter, and somebody who's been out on the front lines defending the faith, both in the evangelical world and, of course, thanks be to God, now in the Catholic world for decades. He's also a father, a husband, a grandfather, a great-grandfather. So, Steve, where were you when you heard the news last week about the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's the big question. I remember where I was when Kennedy was shot.
Right.
And I know a lot of people listening weren't even born yet, but I was in school. I just came out of the restroom at Gallimore School in Canton, Michigan. I remember that day, and I remember where I was when the Twin Towers came down on 9/11. I was driving home from a prayer breakfast with Tom Monahan and the men at Domino's Farms. And this one, I was standing in our kitchen, and I heard that Charlie Kirk had been shot. And, a lot of people get shot and survive. So I said, oh, that's terrible. That's really bad. But they didn't say he was killed. And then my wife was talking to our daughter, Charlotte, and Charlotte said, hey, Mom, they just said Charlie Kirk is dead. And that's where it didn't shock me that he was shot. It shocked me that he was dead, because death is so final. And, oh, you're kidding me. It actually killed him. I was standing right in our kitchen here. Now, it's one of those moments you don't forget.
Right. So what are your thoughts now, almost a week later?
Wow, that's a big question, Teresa. Oh, boy. My thoughts are that our country's in bad shape when a man can be killed for his thoughts and his ideas, especially in university, which is where ideas and thoughts are supposed to be debated, that's the whole idea of a university, where you wrestle with thoughts and debates and you discuss things and you come to a truth. And where our universities are now shut down for only one woke opinion, the leftist opinion, and a man can be shot for that. Now, of course, a lunatic can come out of the woodwork and shoot somebody they disagree with. But what confirms it even all the way is the reaction so many people on the left had, rejoicing in his murder. And he was assassinated. I think to say that he was shot or he died is undermining what really happened. This man was assassinated. He was a religious and a political martyr. And he was assassinated because of what he said and what he did. If he had kept his mouth shut, and like the rest of people mainly, he would have been fine. But he got into the debate. He cared about truth. He cared about what's right and just and what our country's about. But let's face it, primarily he was a Christian. And he said, what do you want to be remembered for? And having no idea he was going to be killed, certainly assassinated. He said, I want to be known for my courage and for my faith in Christ. So when it's a sad state in America where you can be assassinated like that in a university for discussing truth and sharing your ideas, never angry with people, never shouted, never threatened, just calm and honest and fair. And yet many in America then rose up to celebrate that death. That just shows we're in a bad way. It's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah. There's so many interviews and different testimonies that we've been watching. I'm sure you have too online, Deacon Dominic and I, talking about it practically nonstop and talking about it with friends and whatnot. And I came across one interview, and this, I can't remember with whom because I've been watching so many, but it was a really good point because this person said that the irony of the whole thing is that Charlie Kirk gave voice to the people with whom he disagreed. I mean, he actually said when he was going to these different debates on college campuses, he would ask the people who strongly disagreed to come to the front of the line. So it's not like he stood there and just pontificated and didn't let anyone challenge him. That's what he did. And so they shut down a voice that gave them voice in some ways.
Yeah, that's really a very good way to put it. He was a big man in more ways than one. I didn't realize that he was 6'3". I didn't realize that. It was when I saw him standing a couple days ago talking to Trump on a picture. I said, is he standing on a platform? Because I know how tall Trump is. And Janice says, no, he's 6'3". He's a big man. I didn't realize that. But he's also a big man in his mind and in his heart and in his love for his family. It was a big man. And yes, the whole idea of what he did, giving other people a voice. This is what, first of all, to go on a campus and to debate these kind of issues takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of knowledge and wisdom and courage to do that, because you can easily get tripped up, and he's very quick and good on his feet, but he was practiced at it. But you're absolutely correct. He let the craziest people, the dumbest ideas, the most woke philosophies come up to the front, and he gave them a voice. And he never yelled at them. He never called them names. He never said, "You're sure stupid." He would always answer very calmly, very collectedly. He would give them reasoned answers, and then he would let them respond. This is most of the people in debate want to just shut down the other side, and that's what they tried to do with him too. But he always gave them a voice. Like you said, he was a fair debater, and he brought out the truth. He reminds me of 1 Peter chapter 3:15 that says, always be ready to give an argument, a defense, an answer to the faith. And that's exactly what he did. He made Christians and conservative Americans, he made us proud.
Talking with our friend Steve Ray, of course, well known to our EWTN viewers and listeners. Steve is an author, a speaker, a convert, a pilgrimage leader, and someone who speaks on a regular basis. How do you think, Steve, that we got to this point in the greatest country on God's green earth, where people, now obviously this has happened previously in history. You mentioned Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you mentioned President Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, on and on. But how are we to this point now? This man wasn't even a politician. I mean, he was a speaker, he was an activist. How did we get to this point, do you think?
And he's also not a college graduate. He's just a self-taught man.
Self-taught.
Because he cared about it. Well, that's a whole study of Western civilization and how did we get to this place. I think it all boils down to, in some ways, good men say nothing. We are content and complacent. We know what's true, but we just live our life, and all of a sudden we get shouted down by the other side that doesn't have good arguments. They don't have good arguments, but the silent majority, I think that's the problem. There's so many that are like us. You're not quiet, of course, Teresa, that's for sure. But there are so many in the culture that know what's right, and yet they're not going to say anything because they're afraid of being shouted down. They're afraid of being hurt, afraid of being shot, like Charlie Kirk was. Just imagine you're in an office setting and you're a Christian and you put up a cross, hesitant to maybe put up a cross in your cubicle or to put a rosary there because you're afraid someone's going to say something against you. This is what we have. This is why I think we're in the situation we are, because so many have not said anything. They have just gone along with the flow. And I give a talk called Swimming Upstream.
I love that talk. That is my favorite talk you give. I mean, you're a fabulous presenter, but I'm telling you, that is my favorite talk you give. But go ahead.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, it resonates because what it says is that in order to survive, a salmon has to swim upstream. That's how they spawn. Dead things float downstream. Things that are dead float down. Things that live and that are fighting, they're the ones that survive. We as Christians have to swim upstream, but too many of us have just been caught up in the American flow. And you remember the story, the frog that's put in a frying pan of cold water? The frog is fine. And you turn up the heat, and it slowly goes up, and the frog doesn't notice the temperature change until it boils to death. And in a way, the things that are being promoted today, even the actors in Hollywood, which tend to be the liberal ones, would have rejected out of hand in the 40s or the 50s. And because they turned the heat up, the left, these crazy ideas, these atheistic, liberal, woke ideas, slowly increase the temperature, we adapt to it. Americans adapt to it. Even those of us who disagree with it, we still adapt to it, and we kind of just go along with it. Well, real Christians.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to get interrupted by the break, but we'll pick that up on the other side. I also want to get your reaction to a very interesting clip from the very liberal Bill Maher, who's saying, you know what? Enough with trying to shut other sides down. We need to be able to talk to each other. We'll be right back. We continue to cover the fallout from the assassination last week of conservative leader Charlie Kirk, a strong Christian, brother in the Lord, pro-life advocate, just so strong on the life issues, and spoke out about many concerns, especially transgender ideology, but did it respectfully and debated every single day. That's what he did. He had a lot of courage. So, Steve, I want to let you finish your thought before I ask my next question. We were talking about the state of our country. Go ahead and continue what you were going to tell us before the break.
as Americans and as Christians and Catholics, we've had enough. And we tend to go with the flow. We're good people. We're easy people. I think of my parents. They didn't want to argue or debate anybody. They just wanted to live their life and be good folks. But I think we've realized now that we're being pushed to the brink, and Americans are saying enough is enough. I think Cracker Barrel is a good example of that. You take away the conservative, the good old part of what the Cracker Barrel was, and the protest was huge. The whole woke thing in all the corporations, the diversity and so on, is all backfiring, and companies are starting to drop all of that. The rainbow flag is being taken down. I don't see that like I saw it in 5 years ago, because I think Americans realize that is the wrong direction. Nature wins in the end. There are men and there are women, and there is good and there is evil. There's God and there's us. There's distinction. That's one of the things Charlie did, was he brought up the distinction. Being a good Christian, there's God and there's man, there's men and there's women, there's good and there's evil. He wasn't afraid to make the distinctions, because the devil wants to blur all of those things. He wants to do away with that. As you see in the book of Genesis, that's what he did. But God is a God of distinction and of order. And Americans can only be pushed so far, and they say, you know what, this is all disordered now. We want to go back to order, to the way it was, the way God made it. Did we say conservative and liberal? What's a conservative? The one that wants to conserve what is good, to conserve the tradition, to conserve right and wrong. What's the liberal? The one that wants to throw all the way and be liberal and give everything away. And Charlie Kirk was a consummate Christian. He loved the Lord. Everything he did was based on Jesus Christ. He said, get married, find a good wife, get married, have kids,
children.
live a fun life. Have
Stop
children,
partying
lots
to
of
oblivion.
children.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think that resonates, because that's real. That is the reality, the way God made nature to be. And it's not unique. It's not unusual what he's saying. All he's doing is coming back to solid-rooted reality, the way God made the world to be. And a lot of people don't want to believe that.
Don't you think that so much is being revealed now? For example, the indoctrination, the suspect was definitely indoctrinated. You've had Kash Patel, the FBI director, you had the Utah governor, you had so many people who've been involved, Dan Bongino also from the FBI, talking about the indoctrination that took place, his own family saying that he had gone more and more to the left. And then there was a horrible story that the New York Post had, I don't know if you saw this story, about a teacher in Canada, Steve. Listen to this. This is a teacher of fifth graders. And he showed the video that was circulating last week, that horrific video of when he actually was shot, and the gory video that was out there for a while that many people saw, unfortunately. He played that to the students. He made them watch it, and then he talked to them about why it was a good thing that Kirk was shot. And these were fifth graders. Fifth graders. This is up in Canada. And he was suspended. He hasn't been fired yet, but he was suspended. So that is indoctrination. We're going to show you this video. You're going to be shocked, but then we're going to tell you why it's okay. And he sat there and gave them a lecture. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this indoctrination being put out there, and I think, in broad daylight.
Yep, and I think Americans have had enough of it, and I'm glad that a lot of these people are being fired and being replaced from their jobs, because it's horrendous to show something like that to kids, or even to be on TikTok or Facebook or YouTube praising the death of this. It just shows the immorality and the insanity that the left has gone to. In a lot of these things, and we've had enough. It's just we aren't going to put up with it anymore. And one other aspect I wanted to bring out before John the Baptist is one of the greatest martyrs of all time. And if I remember when you were with us when we went to Jordan and Israel, and we were at Mount Machaerus, which was the fortress where John the Baptist was killed, and I gave a little talk there about why was he killed. John the Baptist wasn't killed for preaching about Jesus Christ. He was killed because he spoke out against the immorality of the king. He spoke out against the king who had an illegitimate wife. And he was not only speaking to the Jewish people, but he was speaking to the culture in general, to the government, to politics, to the average life. He was saying what was right and what was wrong. And because of that, he got his head cut off. Yeah. And I would say the same thing with Charlie Kirk. He was speaking to our culture, to the politics, to the religion. By the way, he's saying things that religious leaders are afraid to say. Mm-hmm. He got out in the front and he would speak out against Islam and LGBT. Against all of these things that are great
abortion,
threats to our society. And he spoke out to the whole culture. He didn't just speak to the church. He didn't just speak to the school. He spoke to the whole culture. And he didn't just speak one message. He spoke the whole truth of the gospel, Jesus Christ and man and a woman. And so that other religions, if Christianity's true, the other ones aren't. He spoke the truth about these things, and that's why he was killed, just the same way as John the Baptist was killed, because he spoke to the whole culture about what was right and what was just, and the government killed him. This one,
we have a clip that I want to play for. We're running out of time. I want your response to this. This is Bill Maher, of course, a leftist talk show host, really, really leftist, and what he said about people who are not willing to talk to each other. Okay, roll it, Richard.
They're the people who don't want to talk. It's my main issue with them. And Charlie Kirk was a guy who, he was always talking. And I talked to him here. You know, the right-wingers say what you want about them, but they talk to you. They're not into this leftist think. The left really has much more of I don't talk to you, I don't want to deal with you, you're deplorable, I can't break bread with you.
Yeah.
That attitude, and all the right-wingers, they don't have that attitude.
No. So your response, Steve, to that quickly. You got about a minute left.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised he said it without swearing somewhere in there. But I completely agree with him. I think that has always been the case. When you know the truth, you are able to discuss it. When you're taking a position, I remember a relative that we always argue, and he says, you're a good debater. And that's why you always win the argument. I said, no, it's because I have the right position. You take a stupid position that you can't win, and that's why you always lose. And when you take a stupid position that you really don't have any solid basis for, and you can't win, the only way you can win is by shutting down the discussion, by out-shouting or out-yelling the other person. Charlie Kirk was an example of when you know the truth speaks for itself. It's like you don't have to defend the lion, just let him loose. Mm-hmm. So Charlie Kirk understood the truth. He was not afraid of it because he knew that ultimately he was right. And the left hates that, and they can't stand it, and they can't argue against it. The atheist cannot argue legitimately against a Christian. Reality doesn't allow it. And so I think that what he said, Bill Maher just said, is absolutely perfect, and it's right, and it shows why Charlie Kirk was shot.
Steve, great discussion. Thank you so much. Check out Steve's amazing website, also his upcoming pilgrimages, including one to Israel in December. That's Footprints of God. But also you can go to overallcatholicconvert.com for all the information, including commentary on this story and many more. We'll be right back on a Tuesday morning edition of Catholic Connection. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Teresa.
Hope you're having a great day. You are listening to Catholic Connection. It is produced by EWTN. Check it out online, EWTN.com, all of our great programs. And excited to speak with a fellow radio veteran. His name is Kevin Matthews, and he really is a former radio legend from the Midwest. And there's a new film that's opening up on October 7th, Broken Mary, the Kevin Matthews story. Just watching the trailer, you're going to need Kleenex, and for the ladies, you're going to need your waterproof mascara. I was so moved by it. And Kevin, the line that you said in the trailer, I have to tell you, when you see the image of you bringing the Broken Mary statue behind you to yet another church where you're speaking, and you say, if you would have told me so many years ago that I would be going around the country with a broken statue of Mary talking about God and the Lord, I would have told you were high. You know what I say to people when I give my testimony? I say, if you would have told me that I'd be going around being pro-life and, talking about the importance of our Catholic faith, versus what I was doing in the secular media. I basically said I would tell them, I don't know what you're smoking or drinking, but I want some of it. So I totally related with what I've seen so far in the trailer. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for doing this film.
Well, all I can say to you, and I'm confident I say this, remember that Mary calls you daughter. And, just listening to your testimony, just 10 seconds worth, I just literally was moved by that, because there's a chapter in my new book that I asked Mary before I went to Fatima, and this is, again, I'm sorry I'm diving so deep, but I asked Mary, would you turn my hair white, Mary? Not to prove that you exist, I already know that, but would you do that? Would you turn my hair white so that I can show the world your sadness when it comes to what's happening to the unborn? And I have that letter, and I look at that, and it did happen. And it did happen, and you can find out why it happened and when it happened and whatnot. And that's the next chapter of my life. I am very devoted to Mary. My miracle starts with God, then with Jesus. And it was Jesus who said, I'm going to leave you with my mother, and she's going to clean you up. And one of the first things that I did in my life, and I was born Catholic, but here I have this broken statue of our beautiful mother in my dining room. And she did in 2011 when I found her, and I put her back together, but I kept her broken. She literally, at that moment at the dumpster where I found this statue, my life changed. God led me to a dumpster. It was Jesus who was stern with me and said, I'm going to leave you with my mother, and she's going to clean you up. And she did. And I've been with her every day for over 10 years. And I have such devotion now because I ended up going to Fatima. I ended up being devoted to the rosary, again, Mary. And the rosary is Mary's umbilical cord. It's how she feeds us Jesus. And my life is, I've never been happier. And all I am is just a shepherd dog. I made a vow to Jesus. I said, just years ago, I said, Jesus, you are my shepherd. You are the shepherd of shepherds. And I'm old, I'm sinful, I'm broken, I can't move like I did, but I want to be your shepherd dog. And I promise any lamb that comes towards me, I'll find them and move them gently and without barking back to you. That's my life. And I'm Mary's roadie. So this movie that's coming out is not about me. It's about us. Anybody listening, it's about us. And we're all broken, but we're loved by God. That is such a powerful statement that, yes, it came through my mouth, but the Holy Spirit let that be told. And we are all broken, and we're loved by God. What an unbelievable week last week, for example.
Oh, I was just going to ask you about that. As someone who's in the media and, grew up in the media as a professional, I mean, you and I see this, and we know, being both, products of the secular media and the rough and tumble media, and we both have similar stories. But did you ever think we'd get to this point in this country? And that's why your voice, too, is so important right now, Kevin.
Unfortunately, yes, because evil's always existed. What I don't hear people say, especially after what happened to Charlie last week. And, I was thinking, Charlie, before he was murdered, he was speaking of Christ. And at the same time, I don't hear, I didn't hear the word demonic. And that's what it truly is. And that has been here since the beginning of time. But that war has already been won. And we are living in a hopeful time too. Look at what he's become, a martyr. The minute he was dead, he becomes a martyr. And how many young people, or just how many old people, how many people are turning back to God? I love that. Just all you have to do is repent. Repent means change. That's what all it is geez, God wants you. And as long as you're alive on this earth, you have a chance to enter heaven. The first saint Jesus created and brought into heaven was a man on a cross next to Jesus called Dismas. Mm-hmm. And he turns to Jesus and said, I belong here. You don't. Will you remember me?
Remember me
today. I will remember you and bring you into the heaven, my Father's heaven and kingdom. And it's never too late. Once we die, you're in front of Christ in a nanosecond, and you have you don't bring your resume. You can't bring referrals and look what I did. And no, it's done. It's judgment time. Will Jesus know you, or will he go, I have no idea who you are? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm even going to go to heaven, but I'm hoping Jesus will go, oh yeah, you're that guy. I sent you to my mother to clean you up. She how was my mom? Did she do a good job? And I can say, yep, your mom cleans well.
And well, let me ask you, take us back, because again, your radio background, the fact that you had so many millions of people listening to you, huge personality in the media, and then you basically, your health forced you to leave that. So what was the turning point for you? No pun intended, of course, referencing Charlie's beautiful ministry.
You know, I think the thing is I was working with the most talented people, Jonathan Brandmeier in the morning, you know, and again, I'm born Catholic. Johnny B was, his parents, his mom was so devoted Catholic, and I'm working with Steve Dahl. We had the Chicago Bulls.
I knew Steve Dahl. He used to be in Detroit years ago, Steve Dahl.
Yeah, he's born in California. Steve is responsible for disco demolition and closing down White Sox Park. And, we were a band of highly paid idiots. And our bosses just kept writing checks, and our bosses would say we're a high school with money. And 10 million people listened to us. We revolutionized radio around the country, and then all of a sudden everything changes, folks. It changes, and satellite comes, phones come, radio murders itself, and I'm out of a job before I know it. And then I can't move one day, and I think I'm having a stroke, and they find out, they took an MRI, and they think it's brain cancer, and to go prepare to die. And I'm like, and it was a rare form of MS. So I tumbled hard, and I'm falling apart. I'm breaking, like an airliner just disintegrating as it goes screaming through the air. And here I am. I lose my job. I'm given 2 weeks notice. I'm like driving, and I hear a voice, go get your wife some flowers. And my dear wife has been through so much. No coincidences, people. I look up, there's a flower shop. I go in, and I literally, there's a flower shop in front of me. And I get out of the car, and I'm walking towards the door, and I look over to the dumpster to my left, and I see a statue, a big statue of the Virgin Mary lying on the ground. And I walk over to her, and she's broken in half. She's looking at me, her hands on, she's covered in garbage, and I hear Jesus. Jesus says to me then, will you deny me? Will you deny my mother? And the story begins there at a dumpster where I went in, and the clerk said, what can I do for you? And I said, I want to buy that statue of the Virgin Mary by the dumpster. And she goes, oh, no. That's a family heirloom. It's not for sale. And I hear the voice again of Christ. Will you deny me? Will you deny my mother? And for the first time in a long time, I closed my eyes and quickly said, God, help me. And I open my mouth, and what comes out of my mouth, I have no idea where it comes from. I don't know what I'm talking about. I say, I will give money to the nuns that live around here in your name if you let me take her. And what am I talking about? She looks at me and she goes, I know you. You're Kevin Matthews. You're on the radio. You got fired yesterday. What happened? And we start, to talk. And I said, I promise I'll give you money in your name. Just let me take her. And she lets me take her. and I didn't buy my wife flowers. I got her in the truck. I turned on the heat, and I said, Mary, I'll take care of you for the rest of my life. She's broken. I mean, she's just broken in half. I call a priest because I'm starting to go slowly back to church, and I love Father Mark. And I said, hey, I found this big statue of the Virgin Mary. Where can I get her fixed? I went out in the spring to this monument maker. He looks at her and he goes, oh, no. Yeah, I can fix her. I can paint her. I can put new hands on her. She won't even look broken. And I just started to weep so hard. I said, just don't touch her. Keep her broken. She's broken like me. I said, she's broken, Mary. Just put her back together. That's it. Keep her hand, everything broken. Don't paint her. Don't do anything. And I took her. I had her blessed because she was in garbage, and she's been with me. And look, I don't worship. I've had people, Protestants, tell me I'm going to go to hell, and you shouldn't worship Mary. And I don't care what people say. I'm going to do it. I worship Mary. I love her. I'm not going to love Mary more than Jesus did.
Right, exactly. Loving God's mother is never going to take away from God. It only gives him more. Kevin, we're almost out of time. I want to remind people. And okay, here's the deal. You're coming back on. I'm just saying, okay?
Yeah.
Because there's so many other questions, and your story is so incredible. We didn't have enough time with you, so we're going to make a date, and we're going to do a full hour with you because there's so many things I want to ask you because of what you're doing right now is so phenomenal. So the movie starts on October 7th, right?
Yes, one night only, and go to brokenmary.com. That's where that's my site. You can book me. You can also find the theater near you.
Well, you know what? This is incredible. It's amazing because of your background and how God is using you and your ability to speak clearly and in a way people can understand and all of that. God never wastes his time. I don't have to tell you this. You know this. But you look back and you know that all of that, what you were doing, was for a purpose, and it's for this purpose now. Oh,
and what I've done since. That's how come I would love to talk to you, because I just want everybody to know I'm a regular guy, and I'm nothing special. I'm that shepherd dog, but I tell everyone, I said to Mary, let's be with the most broken, and be careful of what you pray for. I've never seen more broken people.
He uses you. Kevin, we're out of time. Thank you, my dear. I'm going to schedule again another interview, but please, folks, check it out. Check out the film. It is going to be in theaters one night only. Broken Mary, the Kevin Matthews story, October 7th. We'll be right back. Appreciate your listenership, and we continue the discussion coming up on hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra this morning. In the 2 Cent segment, we have found a beautiful homily given by our very own Father Chris Alar, and he's going to be sharing some comments on the shocking death of Charlie Kirk and what do we do as Catholics, how do we respond. And also, we are going to be having our Newman Guide News for a Tuesday, as we always do, with Kelly Salomon from the Cardinal Newman Society. And we have a beautiful statement from the interim president of Benedictine College talking about the student response and the loss of reason and how important it is to make sure that we are listening. And he quotes St. Benedict, and I love this quote where St. Benedict says, we have to listen with the ear of the heart. I mean, this statement from the school, from the Benedictine College, regarding the whole situation with Charlie Kirk is so powerful. So I hope you can tune into the second hour. And then we're going to be taking a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are many, many schools that are responding well and powerfully. College campuses, students, teachers, and then there are some that are just shameful. I mentioned the situation in Canada where the teacher was suspended. I don't believe he was fired yet, but this person, for whatever reason, thought it was fine to show this video of Charlie Kirk being assassinated. The actual video where he was shot, if you remember, that was circulating on the internet last week, it went viral, to 5th graders. And then he begins, after the video, to tell them why it was okay and that why he should have been shot. Education in the 21st century, thank you very much. I don't think so. We'll discuss next hour, EWTN Radio Extra. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Thanks for tuning in to hour number 2 here on EWTN's Radio Extra of Catholic Connection. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. And we are continuing our discussion on the situation with the developments of fallout, a story that has so many legs and is having such an impact. The death of, or assassination, I should say, of Charlie Kirk last week in Utah. In 2 cents, we're going to share with you part of a powerful homily given by our friend, Father Chris Alara. Of course, you know him well from his Mercy Minutes on EWTN, his great work with the Fathers of Mercy out there in Stockbridge. Really important work that he does, especially promoting the message of divine mercy. And so we'll hear from Father Chris Alara, and I'll share with you some other stories that are circulating about some of the ridiculous and evil responses. And I was talking this morning on Annunciation Radio with my friend Dave Asherez about this, and we were talking about the media. And he was asking me about all the people in the media that are being fired and asked me if I thought this was a paradigm shift. I don't think it's a paradigm shift quite yet. I think they're concerned about the bottom line. They can sense they're looking at the way the wind is blowing right now, and they're realizing how many people have had it, and people are, saying basta, as we say in Italian, enough. And I think, again, they're concerned about their ratings, their viewership, their listenership, their subscribers, and all of that. It's a start, though, because they are taking people to task. And I think so much is being exposed right now in terms of the leftist ideologues in the media, in terms of their lack of ethics. They think that they are supposed to be pushing an agenda versus reporting the news. If anybody had any doubt about that, as I said this morning on Annunciation Radio, then I think that's very clear right now. In addition, how those on the other side of this issue are being exposed in terms of their indoctrination. We'll talk about that as well at 2 cents, but also with Kelly Salomon from the Cardinal Newman Society and Newman Guide News. We're going to be looking at different responses across the board in terms of what people have been saying in the education circles about the death of Charlie Kirk, because he was speaking all across the country on college campuses. That's what he did, college and high school campuses. He went out and met with those students one-on-one. So we will discuss, and that is our program for a second hour of CC with TT here on EWTN's Radio Extra. Let's take a look at the weather before we get into the news this morning. They're saying rain showers and gusty winds coming to the mid-Atlantic and remaining unseasonably warm in the central part of the country. The National Weather Service saying there's a low-pressure system that will track slowly northwestward into the mid-Atlantic region through tomorrow, bringing a risk for excessive rain, gusty winds, shallow coastal flooding, rip currents, and some large surf in those areas. Unseasonably warm temps will persist in the mid to upper Mississippi Valley and into the Great Lakes as well, and the northeast, and that will stay with us through at least Thursday. So that is a look at the weather across the country. Thanks for tuning into Catholic Connection, hour number 2, as I mentioned. Let's get started with the news and see what's happening here on EWTN's Radio Extra. In what some are calling the Charlie Kirk effect, people across the nation, including many college students who are not ordinarily churchgoers, have decided to go to church since the assassination last week of the conservative Christian political activist Charlie Kirk. Matt Zurison, co-founder of Newman Ministry, a Catholic nonprofit that operates on about 250 campuses around the country, telling the Catholic News Agency, and you can find that story at catholicnewsagency.com, that he's already spoken with Catholic college ministry leaders throughout the nation over the last few days. He said every one of them has told him they've seen bigger crowds at masses and many people they've never seen before. He also said he's not talked to anyone who has not seen an increase in mass attendance. He says some schools are reporting increases of at least 15%. He also told the Catholic News Agency many more college students are also asking for spiritual direction. So many people asking, what do I do? What is evil? How does God allow this? They're asking so many basic questions. Since Kirk's death on September 17th, social media platforms X, TikTok, and Instagram have all been flooded with posts from users saying they plan to go to church for the first time or return to church thanks to Charlie Kirk's influence. Meanwhile, a report says Charlie Kirk's suspected killer confessed to the murder before his arrest. The Washington Post says Tyler Robinson telling friends on social media's platform Discord, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." The Post says a message was sent about 2 hours before he turned himself into authorities. The 22-year-old is accused of shooting and killing Kirk while the conservative was speaking at an outdoor Turning Point event at Utah Valley University last week. And FBI Director Kash Patel saying the family of Charlie Kirk's alleged killer told investigators that Tyler Robinson subscribed to left-wing ideology, especially in the last few years.
He had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for.
When asked why the person who received the text did not say something, Patel replied that the investigation is still ongoing. No clear potential motive for the fatal shooting has been determined, but Robinson is expected to be in court today on state murder charges, and he's also likely to face federal charges. President Trump, meanwhile, is expected to attend a memorial service for Kirk on Sunday in Glendale, Arizona. And there are some new details about the arrest of a Texas Tech student who was caught on camera celebrating the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The video was shared on social media by the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, and has since gone viral. The arrest report shows that her name is Cameron Booker, and she's been charged with battery, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. She was also cited for assault. Court records show the 23-year-old posted a $200 bond and has since been released. The school confirmed the report but would not say if she had been expelled. Vice President J.D. Vance is paying tribute to Charlie Kirk by hosting the latest episode of his podcast. On Monday's edition of The Charlie Kirk Show, Vance praised the conservative activist as a visionary and luminary.
He was a joyful warrior for our country. He loved America. He devoted himself tirelessly to making our country a better place. He was a critical part of getting Donald Trump elected as president, getting me elected as vice president.
The vice president going on to say Kirk created a whole social network for an entire generation of young people. He escorted Kirk's casket back to his home state of Arizona aboard Air Force Two last week. Again, a memorial service for Kirk will take place at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona on Sunday. Jim Roop tells us an employee at UCLA is now on leave after posting comments about murdered activist Charlie Kirk.
The social media comments by the employee include, "You can't force people to mourn someone who hated us," and "It's okay to be happy when someone who hated you and called for your people's death dies." UCLA says it condemns in the strongest possible terms the comments made by its employee on their personal social media accounts. Adding comments that celebrate or condone violence is inconsistent with its core values. The university has launched an investigation. I'm Jim Roop.
President Trump saying he'd consider designating the anti-fascism group Antifa a domestic terrorist organization along with other left-wing groups. Trump saying Monday he'd move forward with a plan if he had the support of his cabinet and the Justice Department.
I would do that 100%, and others also, by the way, but Antifa is terrible.
Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, meanwhile, also specifically calling out Black Lives Matter demonstrations. It comes after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, leading Trump allies to call for a crackdown on left-wing violence. And the First Amendment can mean you can post whatever you want online without fear of being arrested, or does it? Well, it doesn't mean, according to one expert, that there won't be any consequences.
That's absolutely correct, particularly in the private sector, because in the private sector, you do not have a First Amendment right to say anything.
Florida employment attorney Susan Norton reacting to the many people who are being let go from their jobs after posting social media comments either making light of or celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Norton says some public school teachers and college professors have been reassigned or placed on paid leave. And she adds that those in the public sector have more protection, but ultimately could still be fired for cause. In other news this morning, Rory O'Neill tells us the Israeli military launching its long-awaited military strike in Gaza City.
Israel's ambassador to the UN says the ground operation in Gaza is a move to eliminate the military capabilities of Hamas and to end Hamas rule in the territory. He says other objectives include securing the release of 48 remaining hostages and preventing future attacks into Israel. The strike comes less than a day after an independent UN inquiry found that Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. I'm Rory O'Neill.
And the U.S., meanwhile, saying the focus now is on what happens next following Israel's strike on Hamas inside Qatar last week.
Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, is in Israel here speaking with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He actually has several meetings that are set up with top leadership here in Israel, and it comes again at a critical moment.
Reporter Matt Bradley saying, speaking alongside Netanyahu, Rubio reiterated the U.S. still wants to get a peace deal done, but acknowledged it may not be possible. Rubio again was in Qatar the last couple of days. The Gulf nation has been serving as a mediator in negotiations between Israel and Hamas. And Garrett Haake tells us the Trump administration appears set to send National Guard troops into a growing number of U.S. cities.
The White House strategy of surging federal resources and the National Guard into cities to fight crime set to expand south. The administration preparing to launch a combined mission, including the FBI and National Guard soldiers, into Memphis, Tennessee.
Trump telling Fox News on Friday the mayor of Memphis, a Democrat, is happy with the move, but over the weekend the mayor said that's not true and that he doesn't think it's a good idea or that it will reduce crime. The Washington Post reports New Orleans could be next. It cites documents said to outline plans to deploy 1,000 National Guard troops in Louisiana cities, including New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And Karen Curtis tells us a Florida professor is proposing now a new scale to categorize dangerous hurricanes based on water and wind.
A Category 5 hurricane with winds over 157 miles per hour is currently the most feared, but University of South Florida geosciences professor Jennifer Collins says there's an over-reliance on the wind scale when water is the real killer.
Our scale, you can have a category for each of these, the wind, the storm surge, and the rainfall, and then we can provide an overall ranking.
Collins says the new tropical cyclone severity scale tops out at a Category 6, giving the public more information on the real dangers. Karen Curtis, Miami.
So, is it an allergy or a cold? Cleveland Clinic allergist Dr. Sandra Hong goes through what people experience in this time of year with allergies.
Very frequently, it's ragweed. Most people with allergies are allergic to ragweed, but then there are multiple other types of weeds out there. There's also lots of molds.
Dr. Hong says allergies will happen every year and are chronic while colds resolve on their own. She's an allergist and she says they can come up with treatment plans. A fever, sore throat, and a wet cough are more common with a cold, which typically lasts 1 to 2 weeks and can make you feel achy as well. Finally, in our news segment at almost 13 minutes past the hour on a Tuesday morning edition, second hour of Catholic Connection, Mark Mayfield tells us there's a new study that shows many people don't even realize they may have diabetes.
Data published in the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology shows 44% of people 15 years and older who have diabetes are undiagnosed. Researchers looked over data from more than 200 countries from 2000 to 2023 for their study. More than 10% of people worldwide have diabetes. Experts say many times there are no symptoms in the early stages. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Appreciate your listenership here on a Tuesday morning, September 16, 2025, EWTN's Radio Extra. When we come back, continue our discussion regarding the developing story of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're going to take a look at a beautiful homily given by, of course, someone everyone knows from EWTN, our friend Father Chris Alar, talking about dealing with this, the aftermath, what do we do now as Christians, and just really taking a look at evil in the world and how really it is playing itself out right before our very eyes, I think more than ever before. Again, that will be in just a few minutes. And at the bottom of the hour, because it's a Tuesday, we do have Newman Guide News and a special look at what's happening in relationship to Charlie Kirk at campuses across the country with Kelly Salomon from the Cardinal Newman Society. More Catholic Connection coming your way. Good day, Catholic Connection, hour number 2, EWTN Radio Extra, September 16, 2025. You know, the day after the shooting of Charlie Kirk, when we turned to our readings for the Mass, it was just incredible about how appropriate, exactly what we need, maybe what we don't realize that we need, but exactly what we need when it comes to what's happening in our world. You know, my husband and I started doing the readings together every day shortly after return to the church. This is like over 30 years ago. And it's a staple in our prayer life as husband and wife. And we are always, always amazed at how the gospel is so applicable to every single thing that's happening in the world. Maybe not every day, but in terms of it's always applicable because it's the Word of God, but sometimes it stands out so clearly, it hits you between the eyes. You're like, holy cow. And that's why it's so important to be in Scripture. So the day after, if you remember, on Thursday last week, September 11th, by the way, okay, was we were marking 24 years after the terrorist attacks in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. And the gospel was all about loving our enemies and praying for those who persecute us. Now, God doesn't want us to roll over and play dead and not stand up for what we believe, but he is saying the main way that we respond is with love. That is the answer. God is the answer. The love of Christ. Sacrificial love is the answer. Holiness is the answer. And it was interesting this morning, I was waiting to go on Annunciation Radio with my friend Dave Vacherez, and he does this word for the day, and he talks about the scriptures. And he was saying that if you are not troubled, or if you don't scratch your head or feel uncomfortable by the Word of God on a regular basis, then something's wrong. Because Jesus came to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And let me tell you, I was pretty uncomfortable with those readings the day after, and I'm sure many of us were like, what? How is this? This man was assassinated. He's a father. He's a husband. 2 little kids he leaves behind and a wife. Just murdered in cold blood, assassinated, and the craziness that ensued afterwards. Even now, a week later, I mentioned during the first hour with Steve Ray, when we were talking about this, about the teacher in Canada, Charlie Kirk assassination video to 10 and 11-year-olds, then went on to indoctrinate the children in a lecture saying he deserved to be killed. This is the world in which we live today. And we'll talk about the education or the lack thereof with Kelly Salomon and our Newman Guide News, as we always do on Tuesdays coming up. But Father Chris, of course, the amazing Father Chris Alar, always has a great way of putting things in perspective and help us understand what we are supposed to glean from the gospel. So this is part of his homily the day after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Take a listen.
So many times it seems almost surreal how the gospel passage for the day fits so applicable to a situation that we face as Christians in our daily lives. Jesus' words here, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who mistreat you. That is what Charlie Kirk did. I was watching some of his videos last night, and he was saying of murderers that they are still children of God. And he prayed for them. Father Jason and I went last night into the chapel right after we heard the news and did Mass for Charlie Kirk and for his family, especially his wife and children. This was right after his murder, after just listening to his video to him calling murderers still children of God and that he prayed for them. So what did he do? What did Charlie Kirk do? He wasn't a lawmaker. He wasn't a politician. He was killed for what he stood for. He made it okay to be pro-life and Christian. He inspired many to live a life of faith and to stand for the truth. He invited those who opposed his views to have a safe platform, a safe forum to disagree with him. He picked specifically the most hostile territory of college campuses, where he would go and be many times shunned. Charlie simply said the best argument should win, and his slogan was, "Prove me wrong." But his platform was the truth. So how do you prove the truth wrong? So he welcomed that challenge. He welcomed that. He used the truth, and he was winning. So they killed him. You know, this is a political assassination. The governor of Utah said, he said, let's make this very clear, this is a political assassination. Do you know that this is our first political assassination in the United States since 1968? Martin Luther King was killed in April of that year, and then Robert F. Kennedy was killed in June of that year. This is the first political assassination in the United States since 1968. You know, it's hard to fathom, but Father Jason said it really well last night, that when one side realizes they can't defeat the truth, they turn to violence. And it made me think of Herod. Remember, we just read about John the Baptist a few weeks ago. And Herod realizes that he couldn't defeat the truth, so he turned to violence. This is all scriptural. Charlie Kirk was bringing the truth to college campuses, mainly the beauty of God and country. They feared him because he was actually changing the mind of college kids, showing them the insanity of what they are being taught, the indoctrination, and the lie that it's based on. He said, when people quit talking, that's when you get violence. So he invited discussion. He also, though, lived what he preached. He just didn't preach it, he lived. He said, I'm religious and I want you to find the happiness of God, of living virtuous, not living sin. That's not hate. I was really affected when somebody sent me a video on text yesterday. And in it, he was asked if he died, what he would want to be remembered for. And Charlie Kirk said, you mean if I die? He was asked if he died, what he would want to be remembered for. And he answered, the courage of my faith.
Wow. Do you remember in the interview that we had with Steve Ray in the first hour, if you're listening, how Steve also referenced Herod and St. John the Baptist and why he had his head cut off? Because he was speaking the truth about the sin in which Herod was living. And that's why he was beheaded. The truth will set you free, but you have to be willing to listen to the truth and have an open heart. And that's what Charlie Kirk was trying to do with his Turning Point ministry. Now, it's interesting. There's that very powerful verse, one of my favorites, in Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And his wife even quoted that in that beautiful statement she gave toward the end of last week. It's very difficult when you're in the midst of struggles to see any good coming out of anything. And yet already, in many areas, this is waking people up. Not to violence, but to prayer and to returning to church or coming into the church. Praise be God. Let's hope this continues in honor of Charlie Kirk and because it's the right thing to do. And the only thing to do is to have a relationship with Jesus in the church. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Second hour of Catholic Connection. Smack in the middle of the second hour. It is about 28 minutes past the hour. EWTN's Radio Extra, of course, always appreciate the great work of our guest, Kelly Salomon, Newman Guide News on a Tuesday from the Cardinal Newman Society. Kelly, being that education is your thing, this is what the Cardinal Newman Society does and does so well in terms of really helping people understand the importance of a real Catholic education, the way you work with college campuses, with high schools, all the great programs you have. What was the reaction at the Cardinal Newman Society after the horrific shooting of Charlie Kirk, who spent all of his time with students, by the way, right?
That's right. You know, we are deeply saddened and pray for the repose of the soul of Charlie Kirk. We pray for his family. The Cardinal Newman Society gathered as a staff yesterday to pray a rosary for all that's been going on in Catholic education and education generally the last couple weeks, you know, with Charlie Kirk and with the shooting at Annunciation School and the shooting at a school in Colorado. certainly has been a very difficult time, but we turn to prayer and we return with a renewed sense of the importance of faithful Catholic education.
So what are you seeing across the college and high school spectrum? Because there's some really good examples of responses in terms of not only respecting life, but saying some very beautiful things about the gifts of Charlie Kirk and praying for his family. Then there's those on the other end of the spectrum. What have you found?
That's right. There is a stark contrast, Teresa. We're seeing more and more, so many, unfortunately, public school teachers and professors have publicly posted on social media essentially celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. On the other hand, we see what Newman Guide schools and colleges are doing, such as Franciscan University of Steubenville in Ohio. They gathered for a day of prayer and fasting. And I really appreciated Father Pavanka, their president, who said he's invited their entire community to pray, to attend Mass, and to spend a day in fasting for the violence that's taken place in our country over the last several weeks. First, we had the attack on the kids at the Catholic kids who were praying in a chapel. Then we had the school shooting in Colorado, as well as the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're coming together as a Christian community to fast and to pray. We pray that the Lord's grace, His love, and His mercy would control our hearts. We pray that a great outpouring of the Holy Spirit would come forth on our country and bring healing to a land that desperately needs the grace of God present in our life.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is really powerful. It's so sad because there's so much indoctrination, but on the one hand, it's good that it's being exposed. I was talking to you during the break about a recent story that came out, and this was from the New York Post. I think I sent it to you, but let me just read this to you because this just shows you the indoctrination. It's not just something happening in college or high school. It starts in the early years in the grade school. So again, this is from the New York Post. It was published yesterday. Teacher allegedly showed Charlie Kirk assassination video to 10 and 11-year-olds, told students he deserved to be killed. Okay, listen to this. A public school teacher has been suspended after allegedly showing a video of Charlie Kirk's assassination to students as young as 10 in his class. This is according to authorities in Canada. The teacher also suggesting that Kirk deserved to be killed and gave the young students a speech about anti-fascism and transgender issues, according to a report. Several students from his class went home, complained to their parents, traumatized at witnessing the on-camera death, which they were forced to witness numerous times, Kelly, numerous times over. A source told the Toronto Sun after the shocking incident at a school in Toronto last week. This is just incredible. This is a teacher with the indoctrination. Listen to that, fifth graders, right?
Wow. It makes me think of my own fifth grade son and how unbelievable that is that a teacher would be doing that in a school setting. Teachers who are entrusted with helping form and educate our young people. And that's why parents have to be so vigilant. As you said, Teresa, the one good that can come out of things like this is that hopefully more parents are woken up to what is happening in schools and how we need to know exactly what the mission of these schools is, exactly what the teachers are trying to do, exactly what we're forming kids for, right? In Catholic education, we're forming them for this life and for sainthood. And so that guides everything that a Catholic school does. And, there's lots of examples, unfortunately, like that one, Teresa, that you just brought up. I mean, there was another high school teacher in Greenville, South Carolina, who posted that this death of Charlie Kirk wasn't that in his opinion, it was actually a positive thing. And so this is the reality of the agenda that's being pushed in many schools today. As you and I have spoken of before, there are issues like atheism, gender ideology, relativism that are being pushed in so many schools to students at a very young age.
On the other hand, we're going back and forth with the good and the evil because you can see that it's like that verse in Scripture with the arrows, going back and forth, the good and evil arrows flying back and forth, as it says in Ephesians and the spiritual warfare in Ephesians 6. There is a report in the Catholic News Agency this morning on their website saying that the incident is bringing so many young people back to Mass, which in one hand is really, really great because kids are waking up, people are waking up. Do you see this in some ways, Kelly, hopefully as a paradigm shift maybe? What do you think?
I sure hope so. This is, Newman Guide schools and colleges are committed to peaceful dialogue. They're committed to forming students in truth and the integration of faith and reason. And we need so much more of that to be happening on our college campuses, in our schools today. As all of this was going on, it really reminded me, too, of how we need to get to the root of who man is. And Anthony Esolen has a great quote that says, if you don't get man right, you don't get education right. Right. And so that's why the Cardinal Newman Society, we encourage the use of something like our Standards for Christian Anthropology that begin at a very young age. It's what a stark contrast to what the teacher did at that school in Canada. Right. But about teaching students who they are, what their self-worth is, what the dignity of all human people is, that we're loved by God infinitely, that we're called to live in his image, having that respect and reverence of others. Right. And that those giving students a strong grounding in Christian anthropology will help them lead to a happy and fulfilling life. And that's what we hope to see through faithful Catholic education. And that's a stark difference than what we're seeing being exposed in so many schools today.
I can't help but think of all the young people that were Googling, even if they don't know who Charlie Kirk was, they were Googling him and seeing all of his videos. And I had Raymond Arroyo on the show last week, I think it was last Thursday, and he knew him very well. He interviewed him a number of times, and he kept in touch with him. And he said, as of late, he was really getting interested. I don't know if you heard this story, that Charlie Kirk was very interested in the Catholic faith, that apparently his wife started going back to Mass, and he was going with her. He even put out a video about the Blessed Mother, talking about how important Mary is and how too many people in the Protestant world push her aside. There was something going on there. And I truly believe, as Raymond said, that he was shot because mainly of his faith, not because of free speech, but because he was speaking truth, as you just said, to the human person, to the dignity of the human person. And he was talking, always brought it back to Jesus, Kelly.
Wow. And that's exactly what it's all about, right? And that's where the truth will lead you. We know that the fullness of the truth is in the Catholic Church, and that, our schools can do a great service of leading students to that truth. And that's beautiful to hear that that's what was happening, Teresa.
It's almost time to take a break. So when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about this story in the Catholic News Agency. If folks want to look it up, you can go to catholicnewsagency.com. And the headline is Mass Attendance Up at Various Colleges in the Wake of Charlie Kirk's Assassination. So we talk about that verse, Romans 8:28. All things work together for good. We'll discuss these numbers, but also a powerful video statement from a college president that Kelly has provided us with. It's very powerful. Again, powerful, powerful, powerful. What we should be doing now as Catholic Christians. We'll be right back. Kelly Salomon joins us every Tuesday with Newman Guide News from the Cardinal Newman Society to talk about the important issue of education. And I think this story just highlights the importance of this segment and just the great mission of the Cardinal Newman Society, because if we see what happened with Charlie Kirk, that's what he did. He went out to students and he asked for people with whom he disagreed to come to the front of the class, to the front of the line, so he could talk to them and debate them. And he did it with respect. It's amazing, Kelly, as we were discussing what's happening. I want to read you just a couple of paragraphs, the lead paragraphs from this story from the Catholic News Agency regarding what they're calling now the Charlie Kirk effect. People across the nation, including many college students who are not ordinarily churchgoers, CNA reports, have decided to go to church since the assassination last week of the conservative Christian political activist Charlie Kirk. Matt Sarusin, co-founder of Newman Ministry, a Catholic nonprofit that operates on about 250 campuses across the country, telling CNA he has spoken with Catholic college ministry leaders throughout the country over the last few days, and every one of them telling him they've seen bigger crowds at masses and a lot of people whom they've never seen before. He went on to say, I have not talked to anyone who has not seen an increase in mass attendance. He said some schools are reporting increases of 15%. Now that is an example of Romans 8:28, all things working together for good. What are your thoughts, Kelly, hearing this story?
Beautiful, that God can bring good out of evil, and that, young people are being drawn to truth. They're being drawn to the most important things in life, right? And our eternal salvation. And so that's what Newman Guide schools and colleges are all about. I know many Newman Guide campuses gathered holy hours in the last several weeks, special holy hours to pray for peace in our country and are recommitting to their mission of teaching students with truth and with charity, with having those important conversations, with being able to dialogue and have disagreements without it leading to violence, right? And these campuses are building up students who are able to use faith and reason and have thoughtful conversations with others, even those they disagree with.
That leads up into a video clip that you sent us from the interim president of Benedictine. So we're going to roll that, but set it up for us if you would.
Yes, this is interim president at Belmont Abbey College in Belmont, North Carolina. Put out a great response in light of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I thought it would be helpful for listeners to hear and just see, what kind of academic environment is being provided at Newman Guide colleges.
Yeah, and they're Benedictine, so I love the fact that he quotes at the end Saint Benedict. That's one of my favorite things about this statement you sent us. So we're gonna roll the tape, and then we'll discuss after we hear what he has to say. Go ahead, Richard, please.
On a tragic note, we're saddened today by the news of the killing of conservative leader Charlie Kirk. He was a Christian, a 31-year-old father of two. His death was unjust and horrific. This, in addition to the tragic mass shooting at a Catholic school in Minneapolis a few weeks ago, point to a willingness to resort to violence with those with whom one disagrees. Whatever one's view of Charlie Kirk's politics might be, he was a man who was willing to speak with and even laugh with his opponents. He entered the public square to advocate for what he thought was right. Since one of the main planks of Belmont Abbey College's strategic plan is to restore the public square, this terrible event is worthy of some comment. Our politics has reached a point of crisis, at the root of which is the fact that we have, as a society, succumbed to a malady so dire that Socrates, in a dialogue just before his death, reportedly warned his followers in ancient Athens, no worse thing can happen to a man. He called this tragic state misology, the hatred of logos, that is, the hatred of reason and reasoned arguments. St. John Paul II, in his encyclical Veritatis Splendor, echoed this concern when he spoke about a profound crisis concerning truth in the modern world. We see its destructive consequences all around us: the descent into animosity, the normalization of verbal and even physical violence, and the seemingly insurmountable barriers to constructive dialogue. Many, on all sides of the political spectrum, have embraced a fully postmodern worldview, characterized by a suspicion that all arguments made by their opponents, and sometimes even by their friends, are merely a mask for the will to power and to dominate one another. For me, as a Catholic, as a political scientist, this is a truly heartbreaking state of affairs. Belmont Abbey College is committed to combating this descent into nihilism. For at the very foundation of our Benedictine charism lies a radical and timely antidote to this poison of misology, or the hatred of reason. The very first words of the Rule of St. Benedict admonish us: "Listen carefully, my son, to the Master's instructions, and intend to them with the ear of your heart. This is advice from a Father who loves you. Welcome it and faithfully put it into practice." This Benedictine listening is not a relativistic tolerance that validates all opinions equally, nor is it merely about polite coexistence. This is because ultimately we believe that we and our students must attend to the Logos, Jesus Christ. Only while doing this can we listen and speak to others with humility and charity. We ask that this same Jesus Christ, this Logos, watch over the Kirk family during this time and all the families impacted by the Minneapolis school shootings and deaths. Thank you. God bless. Have a good week.
Wow. Kelly, that is so incredible. I love that quote from the Rule of St. Benedict. Listen carefully and incline the ear of your heart. I mean, that's it. I mean, this is what we have to do. We have to make sure we are listening. And if we're not listening, it's so interesting that he chose that quote, because that's what Charlie Kirk did. That's what he did for a living. He listened to people.
Right.
Right?
Right. and how much listening and how much, dialogue and conversation, seeking out truth is happening at most schools and colleges today? Or is it just the pushing of agendas on young people, right? That's what we need to explore. That's where we need to be careful. That's where we need to seek out the best education, where students can engage in thoughtful conversations. I think of colleges like Thomas Aquinas College, where they sit in those Socratic-style seminars and they have discussions and they debate great ideas from great books. What great preparation to go into the workplace and be able to dialogue with your colleagues, those who you might disagree with, those in your community, your neighbors, right? And continue on that path of truth your whole life.
Since the shooting last week, being that he always went to college campuses, what kind of have people been inquiring more about the Newman Guy colleges realizing the importance of what's going on here and the indoctrination that's being exposed? What's been the response at the Cardinal Newman Society?
Yes, we have our traffic to our Newman Guide online grows every single month, which is just phenomenal, and we're so excited to be reaching more and more Catholic families. I know our virtual college fair coming up on October 9th is another great reason that families are coming to us and they're interested. What is the difference? Why are these places growing? Why are they producing joyful and happy graduates who are seeking out their careers, but also, pursuing their vocations? They're getting married. They're joining religious life. They're, working for the good of the church and society. What is the secret sauce of these places? And how can I make this possible for my children? So we're excited about that and excited to continue promoting these great institutions.
Now, you mentioned there's some efforts in which you're involved in terms of helping colleges deal with social media. Tell us about that.
Yes, Teresa, we just added a new K-12 school in Irving, Texas to the Newman Guide. It's Faustina Academy. We just added them to the Newman Guide this week. As you know, we've expanded the Newman Guide to recognize model Catholic schools as well as colleges and graduate programs. And Faustina Academy has a really unique policy to help promote the purity and innocence of their students that they're being formed. And what they do is they have partnered with parents. They've put on several different discussions with parents, talking to them about what young people are facing in social media and the media. And together with parents, they've made a pact that any student who enrolls at the school will not have social media. They will not have TikTok. They will not have Snapchat. They will not have Instagram. Because if parents are really partnering with the school and want their children to be formed in virtue and wisdom, then hours they spend on social media outside school are counteracting that formation they're receiving at their school. And so I think it's a really great policy. I think more and more schools are going to be doing things like this. And so this Faustina Academy has made a great arrangement. They've also strongly encouraged parents to not even give students a non-smartphone until at least high school. Again, to help them pursue personal relationships, real friendships, to really pursue truth, beauty, and goodness, which is difficult to accomplish when students are so distracted by all that they see on social media, by the pornography, by all of the things we know that exist on social media.
Yeah, and I think this is such a big commitment that the parents, and it's got to be a challenge for them because the kids are surrounded by other kids who are just, attached to, iPads or, their laptops or their cell phones or video games, right? So that's a real, I think, undertaking for the families to do this, but so important.
It is. I think the thing that makes it the easiest is that all the other families at the school are committed to this. So at least the students have this core group of friends that is on the same page, that they're not missing out on what's on social media because their friends at school also don't have social media. And so, surely they have neighbors and other friends who are engaging in these things, but they don't feel like the only odd one out, right? That their parents aren't the only ones, that in fact the entire school has committed to this. And I know in talking with some of my local friends that that's the kind of thing that can make it really happen for young people, is when a group of families, a school community bands together and decides to put the eternal salvation, the formation and virtue above all other things, right? That we know the addictive nature of social media. We know the amount of pornography that exists. we know the gossip and other problems that results from these things. And so, why not let students grow up and be mature and be at an age where they're able to handle these temptations before giving them these devices prematurely?
Yeah, and you know what? I think there's going to be more parents interested in this type of an education. I think it's going to be a result of the Charlie Kirk assassination, realizing that how many young people are being impacted. Like, for example, the gunman himself and even his family, the FBI, those close to him were saying that he was truly indoctrinated with leftist ideology. And where are they getting that? They're getting that from social media primarily.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right?
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
And that so many of our schools and
Kelly,
colleges
great discussion.
are not
Go ahead,
neutral.
finish. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're not neutral. They're pushing ideologies. Yeah. So let's be careful.
Right.
Let's find the best.
Absolutely. Well, we so appreciate you. That's why we have you on every week. Thank you for sharing that statement as well from the interim president of Belmont Andia Benedictine School, and of course reminding us of the beautiful statement from that was part of his rule. Of course, St. Benedict, listening with the ear of the heart. Thank you, Kelly, so much. Appreciate you. We look forward to having you on next week. Give people the information as to where they can find all the great stuff you're doing at the Cardinal Newman Society.
Yes, go to cardinalnewmansociety.org. Newman is Newman, cardinalnewmansociety.org.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it. You have a great rest of the week. Really appreciate their great work at the Cardinal Newman Society. And this is truly indoctrination. And it doesn't start in college, doesn't start in high school. As you heard the story we shared with you from Canada and that teacher, oftentimes, as Kelly's explained, it starts even in grade school. We'll be right back. Appreciate your listenership here on EWTN, second hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio Extra, wrapping up. And I think it's been at least it's been helpful for me to have so many wonderful guests to be able to kind of sort through all of the craziness in our world. Where would we be without Jesus and our Catholic faith? I think you already know the answer to that question. We are in some ways there where we are right now because a lot of people have turned away from God. And there's a word ego, which I consider an acronym. Easing God out. And once you do that and you start making up your rules and saying you can be God, well, then all heck breaks loose and more, and then some. And that's what we're seeing now. But thanks be to God for God. And thanks be to God that people are, in many circles and many places, are turning back to God. Again, take a look at the story of Catholic News Agency today about the increase in mass attendance. Now, maybe this is just a temporary thing. We did see this, if you recall, 24 years ago after 9/11, the churches were packed for a while. Then everybody gets comfortable again and they, kind of leave. Oh, I don't need God anymore. But I'm really praying because of the severity of this situation, as was with 9/11. There were many people who did stay once they came back to the church. And I think the same thing is happening here. But I think all of us need to be reminded of the truth and the beauty of our faith and how it is so important to be willing to talk to people, to be willing to listen with the ear of the heart, as St. Benedict taught us, to be willing to reason with people, and to learn from this horrible situation about how we can do better and be more like Charlie Kirk. We'll talk about that tomorrow. There was a really cool article in Elatea about how the saints teach us how we can disagree. We'll discuss that tomorrow and much more. Have a great day.